Welcome to No Filter Doctor, where we cut through the health hype and dig into what's real, what works, and what's backed by evidence. I'm Dr. AK. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone. I hope your holidays are going splendidly well thus far. Welcome back. And if it's your first episode, you're in for a treat today. It's the end of the year and everyone is doing these, let's look back at 2025. Well, guess what? I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm reframing it in a different kind of way. We're not going to discuss any kind of countdowns, but we are going to discuss some of the lifestyle modifications that I made in 2025 and how I'm pretty sure they saved my life. Here's the thing with the blog and the podcast. A lot of the topics are based on conversations that I have with patients in the office. And sometimes I know the topic and I'm like, if my patients are asking this, I bet you other people are wondering the same thing. But other times it's because I don't know the answer. Like a patient will ask me something and I'll be like, you know what? I don't know. I'm not scared to say I don't know when I don't. But I tell them I'm going to go do a deep dive and I'm going to learn more. And then I'm going to give you some nuggets that you can use in your life based on this question that you had. The beauty behind that is not only am I delivering them evidence-based, up-to-date patient care, but then I get to learn all of these different things about health and health optimization that I didn't know, and I can make those modifications in my life. And so I did a lot of that in 2025, and I figured this might be a nice episode to do every year. I can share some of the biggest things that I learned, and then you can go back and read either the blog or listen to the podcast on that topic if you want more details on it. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, I do need to share that I didn't make all these changes overnight because I am going to go through a lot of different things. Health optimization is not about turning your life upside down in the name of longevity. It's about making small, iterative, evidence-based changes over time that add up to provide a large benefit. And that's something that I think I've been saying pretty consistently throughout the year. It's not about downing a bunch of new supplements and biohacking and doing things that are trendy. If you want to optimize your health, you have to look at the evidence and then make those small changes over time. So when you hear the things that I did this year, please don't think, holy cow, that was a lot of stuff. It's been the course of the entire year and it's making tweaks. All right, let's talk about it now. The first thing I learned is building and protecting muscle is way more important than I had initially thought. I've shared my health fear, which is being this frail little old lady who falls and breaks a hip. So I did a lot in terms of learning about sarcopenia and how to prevent it. That's when I learned about it's way more than being a woman who doesn't want to fall and break a hip. There are a ton of mortality benefits with increased muscle mass. And even though I was doing resistance training, it was a little bit haphazard. Nothing was really targeted and focused. So I changed that. I made it my goal to do at least one full body strength training session every week, and I made sure that I used heavy weights. The ultimate goal is to get it to twice a week, but life is busy and, I'm still working on it. The other side of the coin of increasing muscle mass is the nutrition aspect. So I had to make sure that I would reach my leucine threshold in order to stimulate muscle protein synthesis. That forced me to really pay attention to my protein intake. I did start counting macros, and I made 2 grams per kilo per day my goal so that I could put on the muscle mass to go along with my strength training. I learned very quickly that I do not eat enough food and that I have to supplement with proteins, and I'm okay with that. I learned about the Clean 16 list, and I made sure to grab a protein off that list, and so now I supplement with whey protein and get the amount of protein that I need every day. I also started supplementing with creatine. When I did the blog on that, it made me realize that creatine is more than just skeletal health. There's also some brain health. There may be an added benefit with women who take it, so I started taking that every day as well. A lesson that I learned that I did not write about is, I am way older than I was when I initially started resistance training. And when I was younger, I probably had bad form, but my body was able to compensate for that bad form and prevent injury. Now, however, I cannot do that. So I did experience some muscle strain, which led to physical therapy, which led to me learning the biomechanics of how to properly resistance train. And now I am pretty well set for resistance training, protein, creatine, and biomechanics going into 2026. The next lesson came in cardiovascular fitness and doing it in a way that made sense. I'm well aware of the 150 minutes of moderate intensity cardiovascular exercise that's recommended every week. However, I'm super busy and getting 150 minutes is not consistently sustainable. I also know that VO2 max and zone 2 both require a specific kind of training. So I did some math and I changed things up a little bit. You may remember the blog post where we talked about metabolic equivalence of a task. Well, I used that and some targeted cardio in order to achieve what I need per week and to improve VO2 max and zone 2 output. So the 150 minutes of moderate intensity or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity exercise basically comes down to metabolic equivalence of a task per week. There was a study that demonstrated people tend to decrease their mortality if they get 500 to 1,000 MET minutes per week. You can go higher than that, and there is no harm in going higher than that, but most of the mortality benefits started to plateau off at about 1,000. So I decided I'm going to do one VO2 max workout per week, which is typically done on a stationary bike. I could do sprint workouts, but I'm worried about blowing my Achilles. So I stay on the bike for the VO2 max, and I do these high-intensity interval training workouts. For the zone 2 output, I do an endurance run, and I do this for a couple reasons. One, I need that impact, the feet hitting the ground impact, in order to maintain bone density. Remember, I'm worried about falling and breaking a hip. So running will help preserve bone density. I do it once a week in an endurance run, and the reason for that is I don't want to overrun and then start to get an overuse injury as well. And that is done in about 45 minutes. I'm trying to work my way up to an hour. When I worked out the math, that came to about 500 metabolic equivalents of a task minutes per week, which puts me right on track at the bottom of that recommendation of 500 to 1,000. So I'm hoping going into 2026, I can increase that. But you got to do it in baby steps. There are other things that have to happen, and making time for exercise and fitness takes effort. And I did the best that I could in this year. And next year, I'm hoping to get a little bit closer to that 1,000 mark per week. I also made some nutrition changes that aligned more with my health risks and health goals rather than just blanket changes. I've always eaten healthy, in air quotes. And by that I mean I'm not a big junk food person. I didn't grow up in a junk food house, and I don't particularly like how I feel after consuming foods that are really high in sugar or really high in fat. But eating healthy is more than just not eating junk food. It's understanding your body's nutritional needs and making sure that you're providing them appropriately. In an effort to get more fiber, my family has transitioned from plain white pasta to whole wheat pasta. We also do complex grains such as oats and brown rice, a lot of quinoa. Even with all of that, I cannot get the 25 to 30 grams of fiber that's needed every day. And after I wrote the blog on fiber supplementation, I thought, I'm going to need to take some extra fiber. So now I take the psyllium husk tablets and I achieve the daily fiber recommendations. The other thing was taking a really close look at the amount of saturated fat I consumed. I got some blood work, and I'll talk about that in my next lesson learned, but I got some blood work and found out some things about my cholesterol that were very discouraging. So I started to eliminate saturated fats. A lot of the animal proteins that we were eating before, we turned into lean animal proteins. So no more ribeye steak. I'm sure my family eats it when I'm not around, but no more ribeyes for me. Now when I want to do red meat, I do a lean red meat such as filet. I also started exchanging a lot of those animal proteins for plant-based proteins. That's another reason why the whole grains and different kinds of oats and those things came in. They have protein in them as well, along with the fiber. Not only did I find out that my cholesterol sucks this year, I also found out that my vitamin D levels are pretty low, despite the fact that I take in dairy and I get out in the sun and I do the things in healthy amounts to improve my vitamin D. So I started supplementing with a vitamin D3 K2 combo. And the reason for that is there may be some data that it improves bone health and cardiovascular health in terms of atherosclerotic prevention. My next lesson came in the form of blood work, and this is why I think my life was saved. When I decided to transition from emergency medicine to lifestyle medicine, I knew I was going to have to learn a lot in terms of the guidelines for cholesterol, hypertension, and a lot of these preventative care things that people deal with every year when they go see their family doctors. And I didn't do it with any intent to take over what a PCP does. In fact, I'm not a PCP, and I tell my patients that all the time. I work with their PCPs. But when I was learning about cholesterol, I dug kind of deep into the topic because I learned about all this dogma in terms of good cholesterol versus bad cholesterol. And I learned about some molecules, particularly apoprotein B and lipoprotein little a. So I asked my PCP if she would be willing to order a lipoprotein little a, and holy smokes, mine is astronomical. And I honestly think finding this out at 47 saved my life because it put me down a path of needing to get a CT calcium score. I had to totally change the way that I was eating. And it made me realize that even though I'm healthy, that was something hidden and very unhealthy. My LP little a is so high that it puts me at the same risk of having a cardiac event as someone with familial hypercholesterolemia, which, if you don't know what that is just hereditary, terrible, bad cholesterol that puts you at high risk for having a heart attack and dying. There are reports of people who are seemingly healthy. They're running marathons and they're doing all of the right things, and then they end up having a cardiac event. And post-mortem, we find out that for them, their LP little a's are really high. That very well could have been me. I exercise, I eat well, and I had no idea about this hereditary lab abnormality that was floating around in my body for all these different years. So I am especially thankful that I got blood work that actually changed my health trajectory, because up until now, I never knew about that lab value. It wasn't something that PCPs were getting on me routinely, and I had no idea what my risk was. The thing about LP little a that really sucks is there's nothing you can do about it. And so I now am on a statin to help lower the rest of my cholesterol, and I've been a lot more intentional and deliberate about the eating and the exercise, because the only thing I can do is lower all my other risk factors for cardiovascular disease, and that LP little a is just always going to be sticking around. Very annoying, but I'm very grateful that I found out about it. The next lesson came in the form of learning the risks of alcohol intake. I am very confident everyone knows that getting hammered, just completely intoxicated, binge drinking, and habitual alcohol use are all unhealthy. There's no secrets there. What I didn't fully appreciate until I did the blog on alcohol is that it is actually classified as a carcinogen, and no amount of alcohol is considered truly safe. So the change that I made was I would come home from work every once in a while, or I'd be tired and I'd have a glass of wine, or I'd have a glass of red wine with dinner. No more. No more red wine with dinner. In fact, I don't consume any alcohol at all Monday through Friday. And the only reason I picked Monday through Friday was because that gave me a place to start. I still enjoy the occasional cocktail or glass of wine, but it truly is now occasional, because I don't want to have cancer one day based on alcohol consumption. If I'm going to have cancer because of a random mutation, okay. I don't want to have cancer because of an epigenetic change that I caused with consuming alcohol. The only thing about this that has been a little bit challenging is the social settings. I'm used to having a glass of wine or having a cocktail, and now it just kind of feels awkward not having one. And it feels awkward to me. Nobody's coming up to me and saying, "Oh, why aren't you drinking?" It's not like we're in our 20s and 30s and people are trying to catch you at being pregnant or something crazy like that. Half of my friends are menopausal. Nobody's worried about catching anybody. It just feels weird because I'm so socialized in having that drink in those settings. So I'm hoping as this becomes the new norm, it'll feel a little bit less awkward and this will be an easier transition. Another lifestyle modification came in the form of social connections. So I wrote a blog about social connections, and it was inspired when I was learning about blue zones. And blue zones are these geographic pockets all over the world where people live well into their hundreds, and they're doing well in their hundreds. And one of the things was not only their movement and their diet, but social connections kept popping up repeatedly. And when I looked into the data, it's very true that there are major health benefits with having meaningful social connections. I decided to take a detailed inventory of all the people who are in my life, and I chose to let go of those relationships that consistently took more than they gave. I wanted to focus on meaningful social connections, and I no longer really had the energy or patience to invest in any connections that felt superficial or draining. I'm sure some people found it offensive, and I'm sure other people didn't even bat an eyelash, and that's fine. I wasn't really concerned about how other people were going to feel. I just knew that I really wanted to focus on the relationships that mattered so that they can become deeper and I could work on those connections. Eliminating all the energy suckers gave me more time to prioritize phone calls and a lot more in-person meetings with the people who truly fill my cup. I got to meet old friends that I haven't talked to in a while for lunch. They were wonderful, and it was just great catching up. I got to hear the voice of people that I haven't talked to in a while, but they were important people in my life. I just wasn't socializing with them because I didn't have the time. So I made the time and I built those connections. I also did a little bit of restoration of my body. And I'm not talking about plastic surgery or nips and tucks. I'm talking about restoring some things related to my hormones and sleep patterns. Women's health has been understudied for years. And because of that, we didn't really understand a lot of the signs and symptoms associated with perimenopause and menopause. Well, apparently, I've been suffering for years and I did not know that. So this year, I went on hormones, and it is life-changing. I began experiencing vasomotor symptoms like the hot flashes and palpitations, things like that, about 5 years ago. And I've been in menopause for about 1.5 years. So this year I decided to start the estradiol and progesterone. I was expecting improvement in the hot flashes, but I did not anticipate how profoundly it would improve my anxiety. I also had a lot of body aches, and it improved that. Hormone therapy drastically improved my sleep. I have not slept through the night. Well, before I went on hormones, I had not slept through the night. I can't even tell you, probably starting when I was 38. And I thought it was because I was a nervous Nelly or something like that, and that's why I kept waking up. No, it's because my hormones started going all kinds of crazy when I was 38. So I finally started sleeping through the night. That made me want to do a better job at falling asleep. Now that I was sleeping through the night, I'm like, well, I still can't fall asleep. Well, I removed looking at any devices for about 2 hours prior to bed, and I really focused on other aspects of my sleep hygiene. I'm telling you, between the hormones and the sleep hygiene and not having the devices, it feels amazing to have energy to be able to exercise, to be in a good mood, to be able to focus my brain. I'm so happy that the FDA finally reversed that black box warning that was on certain estrogen-containing medications, because I know that black box warning prevented a lot of physicians from prescribing and prevented women from wanting to go on the medications out of fear. Hormones were most definitely another life-saving change of 2025, without question. And while I didn't write a blog about this next topic, I really do think it's worth sharing because I did learn it this year. And that is, this year really reinforced how interconnected all of these pillars of lifestyle medicine truly are. Reducing alcohol reduced my sleep. It provided more energy to exercise. Exercise improved my mood and my sleep quality. Eating better reduced my bloating and improved my daytime energy. Then you add the medications and the different supplements that I added to everything. It just improved the way I feel even more. Nothing I did was drastic or magical. All I did was obtain some data about my baseline level of health. I then used that data to develop short and long-term health goals and made small personalized tweaks to move closer to those goals. I am by no means crushing it. My VO2 max improved, but it's still not where I want it to be. It still needs work. My upper body strength is getting better, but push-ups are still pretty hard. And this all takes time. It took me 47 years to get to where I am, and it's certainly going to take more than 1 year to improve. And I think it's really important to keep that in mind because we all want things now and fast and rapid. And that's why I think so many of us are willing to exchange money for some of these other health trends and tactics that really aren't proven. My hope for everyone in 2026 is that you are able to do a deep dive on your own health. If you haven't seen a physician, please go see one. Learn what your health metrics are. What's your data? Where are you at right now? And then work with your healthcare team to develop meaningful short-term and long-term goals. Focus on making small, sustainable changes throughout this next year. There is tremendous potential for everyone to improve their health in 2026. Please initiate those steps to do so. Happy New Year to all of you. Thank you so much for being on this journey with me the last year if you've been on the blog, the last few months if you've been listening to the podcast. You really fill my cup, and I would not continue doing this if I did not get some benefit out of it. So thank you to all of you for giving that to me. I'll see you in 2026. Thank you so much for joining me on this week's No Filter Doctor. If you enjoyed the content, you can follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. You can also go to www.thewholehumanhealthandwellbeing.com and sign up for the weekly newsletter where you will get a link to the blog, that week's podcast, and a health tip of the week sent directly to you. It's important to know that while I am a doctor, I'm not your doctor. This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only, and it's not intended as medical advice. Listening to this podcast does not establish a doctor-patient relationship. The information discussed should not be used to diagnose, treat, or prevent any medical condition, nor should it replace individualized medical care. If you have questions or concerns about your health, please contact your own healthcare provider. Any decisions to delay or forego a medical evaluation or treatment based on the information discussed in this podcast are made so at your own risk. My only financial disclosure is my medical practice, The Whole Human Health and Wellbeing. Take care, and I'll talk to you next week.